Hello everyone and welcome to yet another episode of Almost Daily LCK Show, the show that airs almost daily and it's about LCK. So today we are gonna change the format a little bit because I will be talking shorter, I would say, more coherently, and we will just highlight the most important moments of the particular games. And the games were, as always in the LCK, amazing and exciting. We have two series. We had Liiv Sandbox versus T1, so very important series, and I will explain why. And also we had Genji versus Reddit Brion, so not as important series as Liiv versus T1. Let's start with Liiv versus T1. This is a very important series from my perspective because both of the teams are actually, well, very important challengers when it comes to taking the spots into the worlds, right? And also, as I mentioned in the prediction video that you can obviously watch on my channel, T1 was looking very shaky in the past few weeks. So I wanted from them to actually prove me wrong, that they are, that they are better than they are actually showing us, right? Maybe they are hiding some tactics, maybe they are just learning from their mistakes and they will be just much better team, the team that we loved in the previous split when they were swiping everyone. However, it was also an ultimate test for Liiv Sandbox because versus second team in the league versus Faker's team, that was an ultimate test for them. Are they a very good team? Are they really here that high on the third place in the first spot, maybe only by accident, a lot of the series, a lot of the games were really flippy. They were managing to actually win it, but still they were very flippy. So it could have been a reality check for Liiv Sandbox. So let's go to the game one, and I need to say that I feel like there was a bit of a misunderstanding from T1 when it comes to draft, and it was seen on the both of the Herald plays. So in the first Herald, it was actually well played by Liiv Sandbox, and it was understandable from the T1's perspective to actually contest that Herald because they had a first move. Sivir was locked in the bot lane and Zeri and Lulu were actually rotating, but Liiv Sandbox identified perfectly that they have that tiny window where they can actually make a pick, when they can actually kill someone and just run away. And this is very important for every team to identify. Like, for example, sometimes you are already in the position and your enemy has a TP, right? But before the TP is fully channeled, you have those few seconds to actually kill your opponent. So it's very important to perfectly execute that and just run away. And this is what Liiv Sandbox did. And they didn't manage to take a Herald, but they managed to take the first blood. So it was actually pretty good, considering the fact that if that fight would be 5 seconds longer, they would be in the numbers disadvantage. But in the second Herald, that was actually really weird from my perspective, because yeah, T1 grouped S5, Liiv Sandbox grouped at S5, but the problem with T1's composition is that they are much more scaling reliant, and their early skirmishes are not so good. Not as good as Liiv Sandbox as their opponents. So actually that was a pretty messy fight, but what was very important is that both Prince and Closer, so main carries of Liiv Sandbox, managed to actually be on the backline, and they had that wall of Dove, of Croco and Kael, and basically T1 couldn't reach them, especially that Croco also threw his R into Zeri, so Zeri was locked in place. Gumayushi couldn't do any damage, and they just won the fight. And I feel like after that point the game just blew wide open, and it was in such good manner, in such a good spot for Liiv Sandbox. And after that, really, Liiv Sandbox played that game so well, so perfectly. they didn't allow T1 to actually come back to the game. And I feel like, well, game was over after this play. And I want to highlight, guys, that Prince is obviously the main carry, and obviously usually Liiv Sandbox funnel a lot of resources into his pockets, but Closer, Croco, and Kyle played that game so well. Like, Croco and Kyle are so good in this split, especially in comparison to the previous split when Liiv Sandbox didn't even make it to playoffs. And one change of one player, which is Prince stepping into the roster, made such a huge difference. But Kyle and Croco are so coherent, so on the same page when it comes to engages. And Dove is a Dove, you know, guys. He is just playing tanks, and he's just chilling, you know. He's getting zero resources, but he's doing his job in the fights, and that's all what Liiv Sandbox needs. In a game 2, however, the beginning looked much better for T1. They managed to grab a kill and set up properly for Herald. However, at the same time, Liiv Sandbox managed to grab one kill for Prince because they dove enemy bot lane. The play that I want to highlight was actually how Liiv Sandbox played around the moment when T1 summoned Herald on mid lane. I was really impressed that, okay, they had a clear game plan. We want to respond to that play and let Prince get solo plays on bot lane because he had his chakrams. He was basically untouched in a sense that T1 couldn't gap close into him. He was in a very, very safe spot. But Liiv Sandbox just died. If they didn't die in such situation, that would be so perfect. But first Croco got caught, unlucky, but then both Closer and Kyle went too far, too deep into the mid lane, and they just got caught once again. So instead of that situation being quite good for them, it ended up pretty badly. However, then we had two fights. We had fight around minute 14, where once again Liiv Sandbox set up the dive and they dove Gumayusi, and Gumayusi really hated his life in that game. Like, he had a Blitzcrank, so basically zero peel, the champion that is supposed to roam around the map and make plays somewhere else, while you have a scaling hyper carry, you have scaling powder, you have scaling Jinx, and the problem is that in the later stages of the game, Jinx can be fine on her own because obviously she has a huge range. However, in the early stages, you can easily punish her, especially when Blitzcrank isn't around. And even sometimes when he is around, Blitzcrank is just Blitzcrank. Without his Q, that champion is kinda useless. So yeah, Gumayusi got dove once again, but it looked like a pretty good fight for T1 because Kyle got extremely low, and you know, they were playing around the turret. Liiv Sandbox managed to take that turret, but still, that fight, I thought that fight is very good, but Prince played so well. He flashed through Blitzcrank's grab, and then he positioned himself so perfectly. Like, Zeus couldn't gap close to him in any case, and he got 2 kills out of that fight, which is so crucial for Prince and for the main carry of Liiv Sandbox. And, you know, that moment wasn't the pivotal one. I mean, it was important one, but not the most important of the game. The most important moment was minute 16:30, when once again T1 summoned the Herald on mid, second Herald, and Liiv Sandbox was on the same page in the sense that they just called, okay, we want to contest that, we want to block them for getting a lot of resources and potentially fight around our turret. So Blitzcrank grabbed the hook on Kyle and they dove Prince, and the fight looked like it was completely doomed, as you had no TP and Prince was focused so well and he got so low. But at the same time, Duff was on the backline of T1 and both Jinx and Blitzcrank got so low because of the turret, and Duff managed to just basically wiped the floor with them. Also, Prince eventually just shredded through the backline of T1, through those champions that were diving him just 15 seconds ago. So they just managed to win it. And 1 minute later, on top of that, there was another fight on mid lane where Prince once again just fucking shredded everyone. So yeah, he was a beast and Liiv Sandbox won. And this is very, very scary for T1 fans. I feel like they are playing much worse than ever in that roster, I would say. And this is like the apogee of that bad momentum that they have. They are just losing, and even versus much worse opponents, they are dropping maps and they are not looking dominant whatsoever. Okay, then we had Gen G versus Fredid Brion. As I mentioned before, not a very important series, yet it was, you know, it's always fun to watch Gen G stomping the opponents. However, it was not the case in that series. Fredid Brion was actually pretty good. They were always even in the early stages of the game, for both of the games, throughout both of the games, because yes, once again spoiler, 2-0 for Gen G. However, Fredid Brion played actually nicely. I was positively shocked. And let's see the first situation from first game, Gen G versus Fredid, where Lehens went on the solo mission and tried to steal the Gromp from Umti, and that looked like a madness. However, it was so good because if Lehens flipped, right? If Lehens would steal that Gromp from Umti, he would be probably out of the game. But then the fight that unfolded was crazy. Peanut basically teleported into lava, into Azir, and then D-Light flashed for the LeBlanc's clone, so that was such a disaster. And then Chovy flashed into D-Light and stunned him in place, and then Ruler joined the fight and then just flashed through the wall and auto and Rend, and he killed the Leona eventually. But the fight was such a mess, yet such exciting to watch, you know, guys. But the game was very flippy, and you know, Gen G won some skirmishes, but then Fredid Brion managed to get the Baron. But the fight that was the most important was at minute 32, where Lehens got actually caught by D-Light, and yeah, both Umti and D-Light caught him, used their ults on him, and yeah, already it looked like a good engage, yet Gen G managed to grab a kill on D-Light, so it was 1-1, and the fight was looking quite messy, and Gen G was in the better position because they had the access to the river and they were fighting for a soul point. Fight was already pretty long, but the crucial moment of that was Chovy dashing through the wall and Morgan camping on him, so it looked like a disaster for Gen G. Chovy was so low in that fight, but you know what, guys? You know what Gen G had? This. Snip. Doran dealt such an insane amount of damage, and they just won the fight, and then they just won the game. When that fight looked pretty good for Fredid Brion, I was so shocked that Gen G managed to turn things around, and you know, Gwen with Rabadons on those 3 items is just a fucking monster. So yeah, snip once again, and as I recall correctly, Doran got MVP after that game, so yeah, that fight probably swinged the MVP vote into his favor. And also, game 2, guys, we have game 2, super messy. We will not go in details into that game. However, the same minute 32, we have 5th Drake. It was not a soul point this time, but 5th Drake, and Gen G was actually pretty messy in this series. As I mentioned before, Fredid Brion in this game won the early stages of the game. They managed to secure the second Herald, and they managed to actually get 2 dragons in the row. So it was looking pretty well, to be honest. And but yeah, then we had that fight, and what's very important is that Chovy managed to find a flank around that fight, right, around the Drake pit, and also Freddy Brion failed to engage properly because Morgans are miss every single opponent, and basically with Chovi's R he created so much mess, so much insanity, so much madness in the fight that Freddy Brion just couldn't reposition themselves properly. Like usually when you have Victor and Zeri, you know, Zeri is Zeri, right? She can actually reposition herself, jump through the walls and stuff like that, but Victor wants to play front to back usually, and when he is actually angled, when opponents can collapse into him, when he cannot position himself properly and play front to back, it was very, very hard for Freddy Brion to actually play and, you know, deal any damage. And just like that, Genji, after a very, very messy series, they managed to grab a win and they just swiped Freddy Brion 2-0. However, I want to praise Freddy Brion. They looked pretty well, pretty impressive. I feel like they just drafted themselves to their comforts. Like, for example, we had Victor for Lava. Yeah, Victor for Lava. I thought I said Lava for Victor, but no. And we had, in the first game, we had Varus for Henna. So very, very comfortable picks. But in the end, guys, Genji is just built different. Their DNA is just superior, so they managed to grab a win. And that's it for today. Thank you for tuning in. Leave subscription and like and comment, and see you next time, guys. Bye bye.